Chantel Roberts, and I'm an expert witness for claims handling standards, practices, and procedures. I was an adjuster for 20 plus years. The Art of Adjusting is a vlog to help professionals and lay people alike understand a bit more about the insurance claims industry. This week is a continuation of last week's vlog where we talked with Chad Dixon about the appraisal process in the claims handling world.
And these discussions have gone on, and there's countless lawsuits, some of them class actions, that have sought to really try to narrow down and define when overhead, O&P, general profit and overhead, general contractor's profit and overhead are owed. The interesting thing is most courts have really steered away from absolutely defining an answer, and they've left it again to the insurance companies to make the best judgment as to we have to evaluate each claim based on complexity and the coordination that's required and what falls outside of the norm. So I guess we'll call it more of an art than a science. Is that?
Yeah, no, I think that's why I call this vlog the art of adjusting, because it really is an art. Even if we talk about as adjusters having the 3-trade rule for overhead and profit, but that's not necessarily a rule so much as a guideline. And I do want to.
I have no idea, just not to interrupt, but I have no idea where this 3-trade rule came from. It is something that someone thought up, and it seemed like an okay guideline, and somewhere along the way, people took it as a rule of thumb, as opposed to just a question to ask yourself. The best example, if you bought a new home and you were going to repaint all of the interior, well, maybe there's some drywall patches, maybe there's some texture to be done, maybe there's some baseboard, maybe there's some of these smaller things that it becomes a question of would a painter do it? Well, let's face it, most painters can make a drywall patch. You know, most painters can do some small finished carpentry work. So it becomes a question of, are those associated trades, for example? If there are 3 trades and all 3 of them are closely associated, I would not give overhead and profit based on a 3-trade rule. I just simply wouldn't. On the same circumstance as if I'm dealing with a commercial building, a roof structure on, let's say, an apartment building, and roofing is the only trade on that building. If the circumstances are such that perhaps it's taller than 3 stories, now we're going to need fall protection. Now we're going to need to send out notices to all the tenants of what days we'll be there, what days we'll be working. We have to put protection around the premises to keep someone's kid or some unintelligent person from just happening to stumble right into a pile of nails, of boards with nails on them. These are things you have to consider. So even a 1-trade project could qualify for O&P if the complexity and coordination of the job is such that a general contractor would be expected to be there to provide that oversight.
I think you've done a great job explaining that, because it seems like general overhead is just kind of like the name. It would be what we generally overlook, and the contractor can charge for his time and his effort to put that stuff out there. And then I guess profit would also be in there, because I would think that you would say that insurance companies aren't out there to say that the contractors can't make a profit.
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, the insurance companies depend upon contractors to honor the promise they made in their policies. That contractors are very much a partner in this. You know, they are hired by the insured, and they're a partner in helping get a claim resolved. There's 2 views in terms of overhead and profit. The most common view, the majority opinion, if we will, is that overhead and profit is owed to a general contractor when it's reasonable. You know, is it reasonably likely that this person would need a general contractor to execute the repairs that they're trying to make? Now, that's the most common view amongst adjusters and appraisers. There are still some, and some insurance companies that kind of go on a less popular view of paying overhead and profit when it's incurred, and only if it's incurred.
Yes.
Now, to me, that was always kind of an
This
right,
one of the questions. I'm sorry for interrupting. We're actually, I wanted to talk to you about ACV, actual cash value, and general contractors overhead and profit. And I think we've slightly kind of defined it just by us talking about it. But there was a recent ruling out of Pennsylvania that was talking about, hey, if it's actual cash value, you have to incur your general overhead and profit. And so this insurer was correct in not paying. Now, I can see two ways with this. There's a lot of times when insureds will not do everything that needs to be done, and so they're probably making a little money off of it, and so are the contractors. And so since the insurers only pay what is owed, they don't want to pay anything more, so they want to see that you've actually incurred it. On the flip side, I think about someone like grandma, for example, who doesn't have $500, let's say, to prepay the contractor to incur this cost. So could we talk a little bit about ACV and kind of just exactly what you were talking about that I've interrupted you on?
Sure. The question is when it is incurred, when it is for those who are in the minority opinion who say we only pay it when it's incurred. Okay, great. Then incur the expense. Now, grandma, who doesn't necessarily have the $500 to pay the overhead or the profit until such time as she's reimbursed, or the answer is when is it incurred? Is it incurred when the obligation, you've incurred the obligation to pay it, or is it incurred when you've paid it? My argument to that would be when grandma signs the contract with the contractor, and it includes overhead and profit on their invoice, guess what? She has incurred the overhead and profit, and she should immediately send that to her insurance company and ask for payment on it. Most contractors are not seeking 100% of their contract value up front. As a matter of fact, roofing, for example, typically the payment is 50% upfront, 50% on completion. So if the roof is a $10,000 roof job, the roofer wants $5,000 up front, they want $5,000 upon completion. So as soon as she has that contract in hand, she should turn it over to the insurance company, and that way the insurance company can get to that final agreed amount with the contractor, and then that claim can be settled.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice, Chad. I think that's some really great advice, especially for new adjusters who tend to take maybe a very literal view of incurred, meaning like you have to spend it, but you have to say to yourself, adjuster, what is incurred? Yeah, and so that's very good. Do you want to show us any of the things that like an adjuster or an appraiser happens to see? We had talked about Xactimate or bringing that up. I don't know if you, I think I'm sharing my screen with you right now. I don't know if you can get to
Sure,
that.
let me see if I can share my screen now.
Because I think it's really interesting to see this. And I'll let you talk about it, because you had even taught me a little bit about this. When we see these line items, such as like a painting of a room or something like that, it'll just say painting room or whatever, but things are broken down into that. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, to continue on that example, so, and I believe you can see Exactament now, correct?
Yes, 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 we can.
So this is the base screen of Exactament. And you had talked earlier, I just opened a little form called test, and you'd ask how an appraiser would organize. Well, at this point, we can either organize by adding new groups, or we could, in fact, sketch rooms, and they would automatically add. But let's just say we're going to add in for a bedroom, and we're going to paint that bedroom, the walls of the bedroom. Well, in Exactament, everything is categorized based upon a code. So PNT is the code for paint, whereas P is for paint, P2 is paint 2 coats, and the code SP is for ceiling paint. Now you have measurements, and obviously we didn't sketch a room, so the measurements are 0, but then we could elect if we wanted to paint walls and ceilings. We could do floors and walls and ceilings. So if we just select it to walls, we have a code for ceiling paint, which is 2 coats for the walls. And then when you drill down into what would be the actual categorizations for those, you'll see that it includes 1 coat of sealer, 1 coat of sealer, and 1 coat of paint. And it begins to put in together assemblies and supporting events. So remember, when Exactament's working in this, it automatically assumes a restoration environment as opposed to a new construction, because that's a delay in time efficiency. But what it really breaks down as to what's included. Painters frequently remove switch and outlet covers, plates, drop light fixtures, and move away from wall to paint, making easier. An average amount of this kind of prep work is included. Now comes the fun part. What is average amount? That's where the adjuster or appraiser has to really stop and ask themselves, what is average? You know, dropping a light fixture. Well, I'm sorry, if you're working in a dining room, I don't think that a chandelier is an average light fixture, and it should definitely be handled differently. So those are the things that the adjuster, the appraiser needs to be aware of when they start dealing with ambiguous terms such as average amount. The same is true with almost any item in Exactament, and you'll see a lot of them actually have references to, oh, if you should do this, then be sure to add this line item as well. And it just requires a lot of awareness and definitely a lot of being up to date with the changes that Exactament makes when they reevaluate or change their price code.
I think that's like a really great thing to show us. And I know that I really learned a lot when you and I were, when you were showing this to me and kind of teaching me about it, because I'm a desk adjuster, and you're both an inside and an outside adjuster. So I really hold you in kind of high esteem, because I've always said that appraisers or field adjusters are kind of like my eyes and ears. I don't get to go out and talk to the insured or look at their stuff, or, you know, and maybe see them crying because their roof is caved in, or its house is wiped out because of a tornado or something like that. And you have to deal with that as being, you know, outside.
Well, there's always the good and the bad. There's, what is it? There's the hero and the stress that goes along with it. That's
Yeah.
how that works.
Absolutely. So, Chad, I really appreciate you talking to us about this and showing us some Xactimate and breaking this down for us. I think it's absolutely fabulous. Is there anything else that you would like to plug or let us know about?
Sure. And hopefully this will be one of the things that we'll see Chantel doing in the future. But I think the most interesting thing at this point, Chantel, in our entire industry and everything that we do is the changes in the world today. You know, the new normal of what is normal in the era of SARS, COVID-19, and what's going on. And perhaps even more so the awareness of perhaps things that have been going on that no one's paid attention to before. And it's going to be very interesting, this topic of overhead and profit, as to what will become of a contractor's cost of doing business. You know, when you and I talked about this previously in some of our conversations of, well, does the insurance company owe the contractor for a portable toilet?
Exactly. I see that all the time. I see that all the time.
Exactly. And in the older days, if a person was having their roof replaced, it was not uncommon for a reasonable expectation to be, okay, the insured's there, they live there, they're at home. There's a bathroom that functions and is available. So no, you know, reasonable expectation, there's no porta potty owed. Nowadays, we ask that question, if a roofer showed up to your home and their work is limited only to the exterior, would you want to let them in to use the facilities in your house? And does that change what will be a business's overhead going forward? And is that now moving those items into their category of a direct overhead cost to a job? Exactly. So now instead of coming out of the 10%, do we add those items in based on the new normal or what's reasonable in today's time? I think that's going to be a topic that's going to be very interesting.
I think you're right about that. I hear a lot of contractors and attorneys talk about how the 10 and 10% overhead and 10% profit to equal the 20%, which again is just a rule of thumb that happens to stick with the insurers, is not enough nowadays. And they're really wanting to push it up to like 50%, 75%. And my thing was always, well, if you can point me as to why you think that, you know, give me your invoices, for example, then I would think that the adjuster, the desk adjuster, has to at least consider it, if not honor it, but at least consider it. And if they don't honor it, say why they're not honoring it. But I think you're right. There's going to be an increase.
Oh, without a doubt. I'll be very interested to see like a lot of the new guidelines that come out. You know, it's now coming from the restoration side. For so many years, we used, for example, ULV fogging. No one had ever heard of it before. It was something that was used so sporadically, rarely was it used, but ULV fogging is basically a low density fog that can be used with everything from odor counteractants to disinfectants. Mm-hmm. So basically think about bringing in a little machine that basically fogs Lysol. And it sounds oversimplified, but can you imagine the increase in demand in the last 6 months for that service? Right. And then the question is if you have major water damage in your home, let's say it's category 3, black water, sewage water.
Right.
You've now had that, and you've had a dozen people in and out of your home. Mm-hmm. Does the insurance company owe to fog your house once the repairs and restoration is done? Are they owed a ULV fogging for a disinfectant of their house? My initial inclination, and I always ask that question, what if this were my house? What would I want to do? And that's the way in which I go about trying to be fair with my customers, is to ask the question, okay, Chad, we're at your house right now. What are you going to want done, and what's fair and reasonable? And those will be interesting questions to see as this all plays out.
Yeah, true. Transparency for all of our viewers. Chad and I did work together previously, and I would, when I was claims manager, I would always ask, what if this was your grandma? What if this was your grandmother's house? Would you do this for your grandmother? You know, as long as the policy is letting you there, and the policy is while it's written in black and white, I mean, it does have some wiggle room. And if something is ambiguous, then you should definitely give it to grandma. You know, she doesn't have that $500 like we talked about, or whatever.
Well, and I think insurance executives, you know, the big fish at the top of the pyramid.
Bean counters.
The bean counters, those guys too. Well, it comes back to an idea that when they write that contract, when they issue that policy, they've made a promise.
Yeah.
And as we move forward, I think this is going to become a question of, is it promise over profit for these carriers? I think in the last 10 years or so, we've definitely seen insurance companies step up and take a bigger projection of pride about their policies and the promises that they make and how good they are at keeping these promises. And, you know, let's face it, at the end of the day, insurance companies are going to divide up the losses, add their premium, and then that's the price we're all going to pay. So I think they do. They have an obligation to be at the forefront of this, and they have the obligation to make certain, because remember, Chantel, in this, we're the expert.
Right.
Grandma's not the expert.
True, so true.
And the onus is on us to make sure that we're doing these things, we're being proactive, and we consider these things well in advance of before the homeowner ever has hail at their house or water damage or whatever might could be. The onus is on us to make sure we're prepared to deal with it.
And it's like our prior claims manager always said, the claims department is the promise keepers of the policy and of the insurer. So Chad, I really appreciate you talking with us again. And again, anything else you think is important you want to let us know about?
No, to that end, I just hope everyone stays safe. It looks like it's going to be an active storm season. I have become, I guess, too complacent to go chasing the storms anymore, but anyone who does, I certainly wish them the best, every safety, and Godspeed.
Great. Thank you, Chad. I really do appreciate you talking with us. I appreciate you showing us the Xactimate too. That was really educational.
Absolutely, Chantel. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This week concludes our interview with Chad Dixon. Again, thank you so much, Chad, for helping us understand the appraisal process of claims handling. Every claim is different, and every insurer has different protocols for handling losses. However, being in the litigated world we're in, see below for some legalese. Few claims go to a jury trial, and picking an expert who has been deposed the most or has gone to trial the most may not be the correct expert. Failing to have a second set of eyes on the claim in order to save on expenses isn't always the best way to resolve a loss. As an expert witness and former claims adjuster, I'm sharing my experience in the art of adjusting. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your time.